Yeah.
All right then, well. Thought we were all set to go and then. Hopefully they will sort it out as we go along. I want to start by acknowledging that we're meeting on Aboriginal land that was never ceded, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging from the Eora Nation on this Gadigal land. And I also want to acknowledge that this is a very important place for the Aboriginal community, not only for the historical role that it's played in the establishment of Aboriginal controlled organisations in this area and around, but also because Waterloo South has around 22% Aboriginal people in that area. And if you take that as a proportion of the number of people in Waterloo and Zetland, around 40%, if those figures were comparable, of the Aboriginal community lives in that Waterloo South area. So when we're talking about the redevelopment, it's important for the Aboriginal community, both in terms of being an important place in the past, but also important in the present. Tonight we want to, we've invited Homes New South Wales along, and we've got Adam Thompson sitting next to me. And Adam is the Director of Partnerships and Communications from Homes New South Wales. So people may know that the old Land and Housing Corporation that was responsible for the development side of stuff and maintenance was brought together with the housing services side of things from the DCJ was doing into Homes New South Wales. That is still a process that is happening, but in theory they now speak together. And so Adam's here wearing a broader hat, is involved in a number of different parts, not only around some aspects of the development. So we want to have a conversation a bit about what's happening on the relocation side, but we also want to try and see if we can sort of get an update on some broader things in terms of stuff that's happening.
Straight up, there was no such thing as maintenance.
Well, we'll have a little conversation with maintenance a little bit.
Before you went on.
So to start off with, we're going to initially focus around the relocations side of things. So I've asked Adam to do a brief presentation for us, and then we're going to hear from the support services that are in place to be able to provide independent support for tenants. So Adam, I'll ask you to kick off. And
all right, Jeff, thank you for having me, and it's great to be with you here tonight. So as you'll be aware, there's a renewal project underway, or the process of a project underway in Waterloo South. This week has been a significant week as we've commenced notifications around relocations for the first stage of the project. I'll just get you to go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. So we've just carved out there, the area in purple is what we're referring to as Waterloo South. So the other areas, Waterloo Central and Waterloo North, are not part of this redevelopment project itself. You'll see right there the Waterloo Connect sign. That's our office that we have, which is now staffed 5 days a week, which is there to provide support and answer any inquiries around the estate renewal. Next slide, thanks. So, as I said, it's been a relatively active week, or active month, would I say. It started off kind of meeting with various stakeholders from who are involved down here, their community organisations, you know, such as Counterpoint, other services that support the community, as well as local MPs, giving them a brief around relocations and support. And our approach. I want to be very clear, we made a commitment that tenants would know first. The stakeholders in the room would know. We didn't share with them the letters that went to tenants, and we did not share with them the dates of which those letters would go out, because we were very clear that we wanted to maintain that commitment. But we also were very conscious of the fact that once letters arrived, that people would go to trusted services and organisations to ask questions, and we wanted to make sure that those organisations were informed. We started doing a few barbecues, and that was really, my team who works in the area around community engagement. A lot of members of the community have got to know those people. In terms of the relocation process itself, we have to have a lot more people from Homes involved. So we used the kind of some barbecues in the lead up to kind of do some soft introductions to some of the people and faces that you might interact with through this process. We opened up the Connect office full time. We made sure, we're not hiding from the fact that sometimes, even though we're all under the same roof these days, that even our own teams can be disconnected at times. And it was really important that if you spoke to someone at Homes New South Wales, they could at least answer something at a very top line around your questions around the relocations themselves. So on the 27th, we distributed tenant notifications. They were various different communications depending on where you were in the estate. So those who are going to be impacted by stage one, so those who we are asking to relocate in the first stage, they received notifications. We did door knocks across those 147 properties. I can tell you that about 50% of people were home during those door knocks, and we spoke and connected with. We also distributed letters to other areas of the estate. We know if we just did it to one, that questions would be raised in other areas. So we wanted to make sure that everyone was as informed as we could make them through this process. So there are other tenants within Waterloo South who aren't part of that first stage. We made sure that they were informed, letting them know that they aren't part of that first stage. And we also sent letters to Waterloo Central and Waterloo North residents to make sure that they were across the impact or lack thereof in terms of the relocations in the first stage. We informed obviously different organisations across the community and updated all that kind of different collateral like posters and websites and all those type of things, places where people go for information. We held some information sessions over the weekend, which are really well attended, which was good. Gave us a chance to take some questions in, which is really, really good. There's multiple bits of material that have been, I won't give you death by PowerPoint, but there's a lot of different things. I think our biggest piece was around making sure there was different pieces of materials, people taking information in different ways. Some people are happy to read things. Some people need something visual. We wanted to make sure there was various ways of which people could take in the information. We can go to the fourth. We can go to that one. So yeah, I touched on a few of these things. So sorry, I got the number wrong. 145 tenants were door knocked on the 27th. About half of those we spoke to. The information sessions, around 100 people attended across the 4 sessions. About half of those were tenants from stage one. Others were friends, family, supporters who were there to support. Some of the questions we got across that was, seeking more detail about the process, wanting to know where they might move to, how they'll be supported throughout the process, who their relocation officer is, which is really important, and when they'll make contact, where the next stage of relocations will be on the estate, and then can they return, which is a common question that's come up throughout our engagement down here in Waterloo. Just the next slide, thanks. So in terms of support, we've done some really specific things after talking to the community and listening to what people were after. One of the things is we knew that our relocation team needed to lift their cultural capability. That was a lot of the feedback that we got. So as part of our relocation team, we'll have a specialist Aboriginal relocations officer. In terms of independent support roles, we've got a community development worker that we fund here at Counterpoint. Additionally, we have funded an independent tenant advocate, which will be working out of the Redfern Legal Centre. Even some of my colleagues at Homes are a bit nervous about us doing that, if I can be very open and frank. But the way we saw it was we wanted an independent tenant advocate to hold us accountable and make sure that we're doing what we say. And we've got full faith that Redfern won't be backwards in coming forward to do that with us. Additionally in that, things like packing and unpacking, home improvements, modifications to any properties that that tenants might move into, things like mail redirection, utility reconnections, that stuff is quite arduous. We'll be there to support through that. Decluttering, rubbish removal, companion animal boarding during the move if required, travel as needed, and interpreters and translators. We know we've got a diverse community in Waterloo, so they are on standby to be with us through that period. Look, that's pretty much all the, I thought I didn't want to death by PowerPoint. I probably wanted to open the floor to allow for questions, etc. But yeah, that's what I wanted to share out of the gate.
In the home improvements approved.
So noting that everyone has different needs and both now and in the future, we want to make sure that if we've got a home that maybe we're offering to a tenant to move into, that it's got the adequate supports around that. So it might be, you know, it might be to make sure it's got handrails in a bathroom. You know, you might be okay now, but maybe your support services are saying, look, in 2 years, we might need a bit of help around that. So that's the kind of modifications we'd be talking about.
We do the same for the tenants who are in blocks which are not designated for relocation at the moment.
Look, there's absolutely a process to seek out, you know, modifications, particularly if, you know, they're supported by, you know, obviously OTs or whatever it might be, but there is a process to seek out modifications. In terms of changing carpet and those type of things. Yeah, absolutely. Those things can be requested. I can't sit here and not having walked through and not being a tradie. I probably can't, I wouldn't make that commitment, but there is a process of which you can apply. I know there will be a bit of a vibe of, oh, they're not going to fix it because they're going to knock it. But the reality is that people in different parts of the state are still going to be there for some time, and their needs are going to change over that time. So we understand that, and absolutely there's a process of which we can undertake those modifications.
We might come back to some of the sort of broader questions and deal with maintenance. Sorry?
Why don't you start maintaining the places you've got before you start renewing places? I've got no guttering, I can't open my windows, I've got no security doors, I've got no security. Our biggest thing now, moved in and out, things down in the towers get washed every time. Ours don't, it's frustrating, we've got no guttering, the water leaks in my house every time it rains, my house is full of mold. So before you start renewing some places, how about you fix ours?
I think that's
I've been complaining for this for 10 years now.
yeah. Oh, look, I'm happy to take your details, mate. I mean, and I can understand that you'd be skeptical of that. But no, I'm saying about me saying I'll take the details. All good, mate. No worries.
No worries, that's right. No worries.
So we will come back to the maintenance question in a while. But while we're talking about relocations, what I'd like to do is to get some input from the services that are going to be supporting relocations, just so that they can tell you what they're doing. There are concerns within some of the non-government services about the level of supports, which we can also go into. But I think first up, I'd like to get input. So Redfern Legal Centre, Alison Mackey is here representing them. They've been funded to do two things. They've been funded by Homes New South Wales to do the independent advocacy role. But in addition to what Adam's talked about, there's also some funding that's come from the City of Sydney, some small pockets of money that have gone to three agencies to do stuff that's independent from Homes New South Wales. Alison, I'd like you to talk about what the Redfern Legal Centre is going to do.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, my name's Alison. I'm one of the solicitors in the tenancy team at Redfern Legal Centre at the moment. I think within the community, you would have hopefully heard of Redfern in the past, and hopefully many of you have sought assistance from us. We have a team of 3 at the moment who have been dealing with all of the various issues, maintenance, transfer, all of these things that have come up for tenants. And then specifically for the relocations, because we're such a small team, but we also really thought it was important that tenants had an independent person to speak to and to help them through the relocations process. And that's where the funding from Homes New South Wales came from for this independent tenant advocate role. It won't be myself. We're in the process of hiring someone at the moment. And until that person is hired, myself or my colleagues will be able to fill in the role. Essentially, what we'll be able to provide, what the independent tenant advocate will be able to provide support with is a whole range of things, anything from advice and information over the phone or in person at our office up at Redfern, or we can attend relocation interviews with people. If you don't have other supports, you're welcome to ask if we're able to attend a relocation interview with you. We can review the relocation statements once you receive them and provide any ongoing advocacy with Homes New South Wales that tenants might require throughout the process, just to make sure that housing needs are being met and that every tenant's housing needs and other rights and obligations are being met as part of the process. So I do also want to make it clear that, and I think Adam touched on this, even though funding is coming from Homes New South Wales, RLC is independent and we always have been. And so as part of the role, you will be advocating for tenants, you know, on behalf of tenants, hopefully to have a smooth transition to the new homes. But if there is need to take it further, if appeals are required or something like that, then that's when the funding from the City of Sydney comes on board, and my team, the three of us that are currently working, will be able to take that completely independently, not using Homes New South Wales funding, but we'll be able to support tenants further if there's appeals that need to be made based on decisions that are made and that kind of thing. So, and we can also, I would also say that for tenants that are in the relocation zones, whether you're in stage 1 or any of the other stages, we can provide some level of assistance to everyone. Obviously, if you're not in stage 1, there won't be a need for the independent advocate to be involved in, you know, doing advocacy or attending interviews and that kind of thing, but absolutely can still provide advice and information. And also for tenants in the relocation zone that aren't being moved yet, or even in the lead up to the move, you know, if you have other issues such as repairs, maintenance issues and that kind of thing, well then either the independent advocate through that role or the three remaining team members of the tenancy team can still provide that support as well. Yeah. I also wanted to know, I know, I'm sure Tiffany will probably speak to this, but so Kinchela have received some funding from City of Sydney as well to provide some support, but our independent tenant advocate, once they're hired, will also have the use of all of RLC's resources, and part of our resources as well that we also have a First Nations solicitor and a First Nations access worker. So if the work that the independent advocate is doing, they assess that some, you know, culturally safe support could be engaged in, then we can either work directly with Kinchela to provide that support, or also internally we have two staff members who'd be able to assist with that as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Tiffany, do you want to tell us? Maybe come up here so that the mic will pick you up and people online can hear you.
Before I introduce myself, I'd like to acknowledge country and pay my respects to the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, elders past, present, and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here tonight. I also really want to acknowledge 20 years of redevelopment that's been happening in this community. And I moved into the area when the Redfern-Waterloo Authority was announced, and in our organisation, we take a moment's silence to acknowledge all of those people that we've lost. And I know we've lost a lot of tenants and a lot of community members, so just invite us to acknowledge them. Thanks. The uncles like to say it's a moment and not a minute because it's not what the time, so how long we've used it for. So we were funded through City of Sydney for 3 years of funding, That funding amount is $50,000, so it's actually not a lot of money to be able to support the tenants going through this process. The primary aim of our support was meant to provide social and emotional well-being support, because it's not just about packing things up. People's lives are changing, and it's making sure that all of the well-being of a person is looked after. We too are open to attending any meetings that a person might want us to attend with them. Going into your home or a person's home is really a gift that you give that person. And we know trust is not easily had, especially when you feel let down by a lot of systems and announcements, and 20 years of waiting for things to happen. And so if a person wants us to be there in their home, whether it's helping watch what's going on with packing things up or giving a hand, we're really open to do what a person says they need some support with. I've shared the total amount of funding because it actually isn't enough funding to do a lot of that extensive casework support. And for us, we do we provide NDIS services. We also have an elder care program, which helps get older people into the aged care system. So with all of these relocations, knowing that a person might need to find a new NDIS provider or might need to find a different home care provider. So we have familiarity with those systems and those services. And if that's the type of support a person wants, we're happy to help in that way as well. We always are advocating like Redfern Legal Centre on a number of issues for people. So we have that skill and experience. Every Tuesday, I don't know if you know where our office is, but we're just next across the road from McDonald's. And we're actually, the back of our office is on Cook Street. So when things start to be rebuilt, we'll get all of the not smoke, but all of the building materials coming into our space. But until that happens, every Tuesday we have a hub day where we put on lunch. We have Redfern Legal Centre, Services New South Wales, and a number of different agencies that come, and it's open to anyone. We were established by the survivors of Kinchela Boys Home, which is part of the Stolen Generations, but we do provide services to both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal community members. A lot of people who have shared shared experiences to Stolen Generation survivors have said they feel a lot of trust with us and feel like they are very welcome in our organisation. So we're here for all tenants, and it's a community, and we want to be able to be a community support.
Thanks, Tiff. And Mike Shreenan, you're online. You want to talk about what Counterpoint's doing?
Sure. Thanks for letting me speak and come along and share where Counterpoint's at. So, I mean, the first thing to say from our perspective, this redevelopment is not about us as an organisation or any of our partner organisations. It's about the community, the people that are living there, the people that are affected, and we are all committed to standing up for the diverse views that are in this community. When that letter dropped last week, there was some people that were extremely pleased and had been waiting for it for a long time. And thought it was long overdue, and there's others who would have been upset, distressed, and totally opposed to the redevelopment. And we do our best to represent all those perspectives, but we stand united as a community. I think most of you know what Counterpoint does. If you want our position on the redevelopment or anything we've said over the last 15 years from when Brad Hazard turned up in his green t-shirts on Waterloo Estate, you'll find most of that on the REDWatch website, or we can provide it to you directly. We run 2 community centres, one of which you're in at the moment, the Factory Community Centre, and the Multicultural Centre down in Alexandria. The staff within those centres are funded by DCG under the Targeted Early Intervention Programme. That programme is meant to only support people with family and children, but we work on estates where about 60 or 70% of people are over the age of 50. We get $400,000 a year for that. And for that 400,000, we're seeing about 700 clients a year. Sometimes out of those 700 clients, we see them 10 times each on average. And that's what our caseworkers do. So that's Ellie, Rory, Grant, and Seal. And from that, we deal with a lot of issues on individual housing issues, individual health issues, individual Centrelink issues, and so on. If any of those clients are affected directly by the relocations, our caseworkers will still help and resource them, but we through that process. But we're strongly encouraging you to utilise the speciality and the advocacy that comes from Redfern Legal Centre. Separate to that case management that we do as core business, we also have a range of community events and community groups that we resource and support directly and indirectly that equates to about another 7,000 contacts a year. The community development bucket and funds that we get help us do that and help us advocate for the issues that come up from both individuals and community groups. So just to be clear in terms of the community development, yes, Black gave us 80,000 last year and it expires in June. And I don't believe there's any more money in that bucket, but we will see. But we have received 50,000, just like Tiffany, from the City of Sydney going forward. That allows us to employ Navin, who's in the room there, and Navin has been.
Stand up.
Yeah, he's shy at the back. Yeah. Navin's been attending all the pop-up community events that Housing have been running. That's from the cleanup days to the barbecues to the information sessions, helping with the logistics and organising those events, and also hosting his own monthly morning teas with the community. In addition to that, we've been resourcing the Waterloo Redevelopment Group, which is made up of community leaders, elected representatives from the community who have been steering housing throughout this whole process, helping with things like getting them to agree to a compact for Waterloo of baseline standards on how they communicate. So for a couple of years there, Housing were only communicating to the community through the Daily Telegraph. Really glad that's changed, and congratulations, Adam Thompson, and bringing that around. So things like that is what the residents have been advocating on. They helped with the design of the videos and the collateral and the posters that you've seen around the estate. So we've had a real good influence on how information is being communicated from Housing. We also have another group called Groundswell, who is a group of NGOs who hear what all the service providers are hearing, what their concerns are, and make sure that information is feeded back into the government system, whether that be Housing, City of Sydney, Health, or DCG. From that work, we have what's called the Waterloo Human Service Plan. That's made several progress, and that was about things that are happening here and now, issues that people were concerned about here and now, not just with the redevelopment. And there's been some significant progress in that plan being implemented, albeit stalled in the last couple of months due to the changes in government. But I'm pretty positive that will be coming back on board pretty soon. We also provide meeting space and support, logistical support to groups like REDWatch, who hold these information sessions, Action for Public Housing, utilise our meeting space, and with various other groups that also operate out the space. So that's the kind of support we are doing. It's community development based. Our core business is community centres and case managements. And while we're not funded to do case management, if for any reason people can't access the Redfern Legal Centre's case management, we're there as a backup and as a complementary to that, and we'll be looking at the broader community supports going forward. Last week we just held Summer on the, or 2 weeks ago, our team held Summer on the Green, which gave an opportunity for agencies to come together along with the community to share what they've been doing while jumping up and down on bouncy castles and having a bite to eat. So that's the kind of social support that Counterpoint will continue to do and will continue to advocate strongly. I think me, Adam, and Carrie come across each other at least once a week and have regular debates on a number of issues and a number of approaches. And I have to say, to their credit, they've generally been pretty flexible, open, and willing to consider new approaches and new ways of doing business. And we hope that continues. Stage one is probably going to be a lessons for a lot of us, but this is a 15, 30-year project, so we need to try and just keep an eye on what's working and what's working, and make sure government are learning lessons as they go along. And that's the support we'll continue to offer throughout this period. Happy to answer any questions when you get to them, Jeff.
I guess just before we move to questions around relocations, probably useful just to emphasise a couple of things that have come out from the services. And one of those is that as a collection of services under the Groundswell umbrella, we have been pushing Homes New South Wales around the level of support. And there are concerns around that lack of case management, social work, health and wellbeing supports. As Michael mentioned, the bulk of funding for community centres is for targeted early intervention. It's not for the bulk of people that live on public housing, and we've been pushing homes to try and look more into that sort of space. The other thing that Mike mentioned was around the human services planning. And in doing that, and in the earlier health impact assessment, it was plain that an awful lot of work needed to happen to actually improve the way in which human services operate in this area for tenants and provide support, in particular for people coming in with high needs. We continue to push and prosecute those discussions with government and with homes, and we would certainly like to have seen more happen in that space than what we have, and be in a better place heading into relocations. Because it's one thing to have a relocations person helping you through the system. It's another thing to actually have the support systems that are there within health, within drug and alcohol, etc., that are easily accessible to be able to provide supports for people. So that's an ongoing conversation, and we'll come back to a little bit of that in terms of people in place later on in this discussion. But I think I'd just like to open it up at this point if you've got any questions around the relocation aspect, or around the supports that are being offered by the non-government agencies. Now would be a good time to ask those questions.
There was one online that we can start with, probably if you hadn't. It was some people paying $120 a week rent. How much will they pay if they do move back into the area?
In terms of what you pay in rent, it's based on your means. That's a means tested mechanism, and that won't change regardless of what the bricks and mortar is around you.
Homes consider giving a rent-free period the entire time that this relocation process is happening.
Or for like a
It's the blanket rent whilst tenants are going through the relocation process to deal with the trauma.
I don't think that would be something we would consider at this point in time. I mean, the rental, the rent that we acquire is part of funding services. That hasn't been discussed at this point.
I heard there was going to be something like a 2-week rent increasing, so that when you were moving, you weren't paying rent on 2 weeks.
Oh, sorry. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry. In relation to that, no, that's correct. Yeah, carry on. Ron's done that. Yep. Yeah.
One of the things we were concerned about is that some of this basic sort of stuff about how the system worked wasn't actually out in the Q&A for people. And I guess from our perspective, you're not only dealing with the people that are currently been given a notice and said you're going to move, but you've got the other part of Waterloo South that have basically been told it's going to be 2 years before you know you're going to move. And so that sort of waiting for the penny to drop as to whether or not you're next or whether you're going to be towards the end of that period. Yeah. There's also the need to be able to provide supports in that space, and to have people sort of, if you like, knowing about the process and what's going to happen rather than having to wait for some time to do it. And that was a concern that REDWatch did have.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair comment. I think what we've learned from the past is we've put a lot of timeframes on these things and then have to move those timeframes and move them again. A lot of the feedback we had is when we didn't have a timeline, there was this open level of uncertainty. One of the key, I guess, pieces of feedback that we got, particularly we went through an exercise when we changed the tenure mix and uplifted it to 50-50. Our teams had 5,000 interactions in the 6 weeks that followed, and that included phone calls or attempted phone calls at least to all residents within all of Waterloo Estate. And one of the overwhelming things that came back, and like I literally had every member of my team having to put calls in, including myself. And one call that really stuck with me was this thing where a lady spoke to me and she said, and I'm sure she's not the only one who's had this. She goes, I've had my bags packed next to my door for 16 years. And I thought to myself, well, like, we have to be better around providing some level of certainty. And I'd rather, to be frank, I'd rather give some level of certainty and then explain if we need to pivot than give an open-ended answer of we don't know. Like the reality is we are in the midst of the contract has not been formally awarded to the preferred proponent. We're getting close to that, and that is set to be done at the end of March. So we're really, really close to that point. What that looks like and what's awarded with that will very much dictate the timings around when things are phased. So once we have that certainty, what I can guarantee you is when we know, you'll know. Like there won't be any kind of holding information for when it suits some kind of platform or timing. So as soon as we are completely aware of the hard dates around things, then you'll know. But what we do know is right now from the conversations and what we're working towards, 2 years is a fair amount of time that we're comfortable with sharing because we think that is most likely how it's going to play out.
What's the proponent?
So that's the Stockland Consortium. So my apologies, Norrie. So that's the development partner. So that's Stockland, who are the developer, Birriby Housing, which is the Aboriginal community housing provider, Link Wentworth, and City West, who are the CHPs. Sorry, the community housing providers. My apologies.
And yet it's not in contract.
We're right there at the end. It's really, it's right there. So we haven't done the full award yet.
Contract's not signed, but we've been given our move out notice. Just checking, is that right?
That is right, Norrie.
I'll come back to some of that. Sorry.
With the relocation process, like,
Yep.
it's starting to get like really frustrating, like to be quite honest, because like around this time last year, I got a call from whoever it was, saying that sometime in the year 2025, they're gonna start relocating people, right? So the other day, I went down to the
Information session.
And they go, where'd you get this information from? Where'd you get this information from? And I'm like, well, I got a call last time saying, it will happen sometime in 25. And then they asked me, where is my location, where the place is? So my place is just over George Street. And they said they're going to start on stage 1 first. Because currently, because I'm getting told different stories that one that it was going to be apartments getting built where my place is, but they're not going to put apartments there now because they're going to put park there. So what's the point of?
Yeah. Look, I hope I can't comment on your specific thing, but I'll be happy to get your address. I've got Carrie from my team here. We'll get you a specific address and we'll give you something really definitive. I apologise that you've got mismessaged. It's certainly not been our intent. I think I know the phone calls you're referring to. They're probably the same ones I am. And if there was a miscommunication there, I apologise. But we'll take responsibility for that. But we'll go over your details and we can give you a definitive outline of what's impacting you now and what will impact in the future.
Like if they're going to knock down my place and put a park there, I'm happy to stay until my place is ready to go. But it just seems that there's some miscommunication because it's like some person sent me this. And I'll just,
Yeah. And look, I appreciate you coming and telling us that. I think when I first sat here with Jeff, I think the first thing I said was, we're going to do our best, but we'll make some mistakes or missteps along the way. But we want to hear that so we can be better. We are not being perfect, and we don't presume that this process will be completely clear sailing. But to Mike's point earlier, we think we've done a reasonably good plan based on consultation with the community and what they've told us we need to be better at. But I almost guarantee we'll get through this and we'll go, well, there's a long list here of things that we can do even better than that.
and the second question is, because like, friend of mine who's like sister to me, she's helped me, she asked me, she knew that this was coming up, she's like, with the temporary relocation process, are they going to do what, like when somebody first applies for housing, they have to do like C1, C2 or CS. Do the relocation process go by what I had put down as the second location?
Yeah, look, no, it doesn't. And the reason that is because people's needs change. So that's what the relocations process is about, is actually sitting down and talking to you about your needs now. And I think I touched on it earlier. What do your needs look like in 2 years? Like, we know we've got an ageing residence base in Waterloo, and particularly even in the first stage, that what their situation is now may change. And that's not just for an ageing group, it can be anyone in the state. So no, the answer to that question is where you'll move. I think the other thing I'll pick up on there is we're not looking at these as temporary relocations. Now, people have the absolute right to return if they so wish, but we're not going to move someone into a place that they couldn't stay in, notwithstanding people's needs change. So
like, I'm happy to move back to Waterloo.
Yeah. And we've been very clear on that, and that's a change in government position that we completely support a right to return to the estate once properties are completed.
Can I just do a follow on from that?
Sure.
Adam, you've talked about having the contracts finalised towards the end of this month.
Yes.
And one of the aspects of what will have to be exhibited further down the track will be a staging plan for what happens, which I presume is where the 2 years is coming from in terms of. So I guess the question is, when you've got the proposal sorted out and agreed with the developers, what will we see at that point? Will we actually, can we see a staging diagram that says, look, we don't know when it's going to happen, but we're starting here and we're going to do this and then we're going to do that? That then provides some certainty for people rather than the current wait for 2 years when you might find out a little bit more.
Totally agree. So I had a briefing with the Executive Director, Lisa Marie Gliani, who is overseeing this project, and she's given me assurance that we'll be able to come to the community with staging plans once the contract is awarded at a point in time, not too long after that. So I'm happy to make that commitment. I checked with that with our Executive Director today. And she has supported that.
Useful for people like yourself in terms of knowing where that.
Especially like because one thing that annoys me with housing itself is that every time they come for their inspections, like I've been in my place since 2014. And every time they come in, they can see that my kitchen sink drawers are falling bits. And each time I've been telling them, can you get this done, get this done, get this done? I'm still waiting for maintenance to get it done. So basically, I'm living in a house that I can technically not use the drawers or the
Well, let's get you there. Have you got a work order number that you're aware of? Have you got an incident number? It's okay if you don't. All I say, if I've got that, I'll make a call. As soon as I walk out of this meeting and find out what it is. But let's grab your details straight after this meeting. I'm happy to follow up myself, and I'll give you my personal details and you can hold me to account.
They come in and they take photos and they keep their little iPad.
Yeah, I'll get it. Frustrating.
I also wanted to say, if you or anyone else in the room is having those persistent issues with getting maintenance done at your properties and you want some legal advice about that, that's what my Redfern Legal Centre, not so much the independent tenant advocate, but the team that I'm in, the tenancy team there, that's what we specialise in. We do this every day. So feel free to get in touch and get some advice, and we can help you with in that sense.
Sleeping quarters is fine to sleep in.
Yeah.
The is fine to sleep. Or do stuff. The balcony is fine to just chill out. But it's just that the whole kitchen, in my opinion, it's starting to.
Well, yeah, like I say, I mean, that's a very individual matter, but I'm happy to take the details, mate, and I don't want to stand in the way of my colleague here from Redfern Legal, but look, give me the opportunity to chase that up and I'll do that for you.
Can I ask a follow-up question to Alison?
Sure.
There's a new maintenance contract
There
in
is.
place with a
Yes.
whole of new and improved procedures that are supposed to be sorting out all these problems.
Yes.
Has it lessened your workload?
To be frank, no, it hasn't. Look, I think maintenance, or at least what we hear from tenants in public housing, has been for a very long time a very significant issue.
Yep.
We do some work, like we do have monthly meetings with some of the local office team leaders from the local offices with Homes New South Wales, where we sometimes can escalate matters for tenants that have come to us with repair matters. I would say on our phone list, you know, the number of people calling about repairs has not decreased since the new maintenance contract came in. So yeah, definitely from our perspective, it hasn't decreased our workload.
Yeah.
I don't have stats for you, but it's certainly as a whole, yeah, it hasn't.
Well, let me openly say, you know, we acknowledge that there's a new contractor in the area, and we're not making any excuses, but we've heard some similar feedback. At the end of the day, we're accountable to that. But there are discussions at the moment talking about some adjustments. We are hearing some of the same feedback for this particular area, and so we are chasing that up, and there is that avenue, and Redfern Legal are advocating pretty strongly around all of this stuff with us and keeping us to account, and we have heard that, and we're making inquiries.
Because I think there's a whole range of issues, not just that, you know, the repairs are being reported and not done, but there's, you know, sometimes contractors are coming and doing like patch repairs, I'll call it, rather than addressing the underlying issue, or, you know, attending without providing correct notice, or coming at a time where the tenant's not home, and then it gets marked as complete, but the tenant doesn't know that.
Yeah.
So there are all of these things that we see that really complicate and make it difficult for tenants to get the repairs done in the properties. And that's sort of, as you said, where our role steps in to try and escalate it where we can, try and get repairs done.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Peter, you've got something on that?
Yeah, someone might. Firstly, have all affected people been contacted and met with a relocation officer?
Well, everyone has received the notice. As I said, half of those were on door knocks. I'd probably have to get the hard numbers in terms of, but it would be in the minority of those who haven't been contacted directly by us, whether it was through phone. Obviously, haven't had face-to-face contact. We're in the process now where meetings are starting to be booked in now. So that's kind of the process we're in now, noting that notifications were only lived on the 27th.
Yep, and then a couple of quick ones, I think. The residents have a choice of the new area that they'll be moved into.
Yeah, look, in terms of area, look, we've had a range of different things, even in this early stages, where people have made it clear that they want to move, maybe near some family in another suburb, or indeed stay in Waterloo. That's really part of the relocations officer's process, is to not only understand needs, but where they want to be. So it's been a mix, to be honest, at the moment.
Yeah, great. And then in that same vein, will residents have the option to remain in their new property if they don't want to come back?
Absolutely.
There's one online that relates to the Metro Quarter and the 70
Metro Quarter in a bit, I think. We'll just hold that one. You had a question?
So we acknowledge that language is important. What's with this right of return nonsense? Why are you mimicking the Israeli terrorist state's language? Why are we calling it a right of return centre?
Oh, it's literally the language that gets said to us, to be honest. Like, well, we have a right to return. I value what you're saying, but people are saying, do I have a right to return? So that's the end. There's no deeper thought than that, but I acknowledge what you've said.
Just in terms of once everyone's been evicted, how many social housing beds will be lost?
There'll be no loss of social housing beds.
No,
No, there'll be an uplift, yeah.
enough, will they be just saying, will be then be the same as, before the evictions?
Before the relocations, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to answer the question.
So it's a question about that.
Beds, actual beds, like not how many, so social, how many tenants will be housed compared after the evictions compared to now?
Okay, look, I think I understand what you're saying. So we acknowledge that there will be some tenancies that we speak to, that there will be more than the people that are on the actual tenancy itself. So it's something that we've accounted for, and we will work through. We're not, Homes New South Wales isn't just responsible for social housing. We're also responsible for homelessness and supporting homelessness services. So we are quite aware that over occupancy is an issue, particularly in some of the properties across Waterloo, and we'll make sure we're working with those households to make appropriate arrangements if that's what we're going to.
If I could just ask one question coming on from something that was said before about the relocation side of stuff. One of the issues that was highlighted coming out of the earlier health impact assessment was a need to look at the placement of people who were being relocated, and in particular a concern to make sure that people that had histories in terms of antisocial behaviour and other things were not put into or relocated into locations where that concentrated issues. And a lot of the conversations around relocations have been about people finding places.
Yeah.
The big allocation question right across public housing is people inappropriately being put into places.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what's happening on that as far as the relocation.
Well, you touched on it there. That issue is not an issue that's isolated to Waterloo or the city. It is an issue for us across the state. And I know it seems like fodder, but we are currently reviewing our allocation policy. Like any government agency, we are bound by that policy and allocate through the frameworks of that. But we acknowledge that's got some gaps in it, particularly as the cohorts change, as our priority list changes and we allocate properties. So whilst I don't have a definitive answer in terms of what those changes are, I can acknowledge that we are looking at it because we acknowledge that changes need to be made.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it is a question about where you're relocating people that already have a tenancy record.
Yeah.
To make sure that in fact they're put in an appropriate place, preferably with appropriate support,
yes,
which is the problem that exists at the present moment. But now's an opportunity also to do that in relocation. And
look, and again, I'll refer back to that relocations process. Is that'll be key to that? Yeah.
Just a question, about like when parents were here last time talking about in regards to like relocating to the place and relocating back, like for where I'm living at the moment, like when I first applied, housing was going to put me into the high set houses.
Yep.
The high rise.
Oh, high rise. So yep.
But they told me that for me to not get put into a high rise and get into a low set place, I had to get a medical certificate from the psychologist detailing that I couldn't go into a high rise, and also I had to get a medical certificate from my doctor saying I needed a low set house. So if in the relocation process and then coming back, would you need to have the medical forms done again so then they know that I've got to basically, or would Homes basically bring up the old records and go, okay, yeah, this person needs to be in a low set house.
Yeah.
Like I've got under my name.
Yep.
But also I can't go into a high rise because I have sometimes suicidal thoughts as well.
Yeah.
So the psychologist had to basically write a letter to housing detailing he must be in a low set. So like, and he basically said like, like my place is like from the outside, it's a free story.
Yep.
But when you're actually inside, it's a 2-story.
Right.
So he's basically said, like, if it's a 3-story, yeah, that's fine. But anything above 3-story, it's like.
Yeah. Look, the only reason, I think that's a really great question, a really valid one. I think the thing about need is the most important thing there. And if your needs haven't changed, neither will the type of property that we aim to put you in. So.
Yes, but they have, because like homes haven't mentioned about like, you know, when you're applying for relocation and bringing back in, we have to go through the whole process again.
Yes, I think that's an important question.
Yeah, I
to
think
try
it
and
is, yeah.
clarify, because there's also a cost question for many people associated with that as well.
In terms of the relocations, I obviously don't have the answer because these are just kicking off, but I would say we've seen a few times with general like tenant initiated transfers where housing needs have already been established because you've already been housed when you are, that homes is in some circumstances anyway, still requiring further, you know, updated medical documentation, which we have advocated against because unless from our perspective, unless the housing situation has changed or the housing need has changed or developed further, if it's already on file with Homes New South Wales, obviously, as Jeff said, there is like further costs to the tenants and like having to go through that process. So I think it is something to think about in terms of relocations because it's a really valid point. We hear tenants talk about that a lot in terms of the transfer process. So I've already put that in, I've already put that in, I've already put that in.
Yeah, because I'm still with the same doctor saying something. And even they both had said, you know, can you find out if we do it again?
I think it would be different. So say, for example, you go from being able to be in a 2-story property to only having to be in a ground floor for whatever reason, then at that point, I think it would make sense that perhaps further evidence is required to show that your need has changed and therefore, you know, but certainly if it's just the same need.
Yeah, look, I'm interested that there's been other like instances of that. So what I can say is I'll go away and confirm that position. I'll confirm with Jeff and Jeff can share it through this channel.
I mean, I think that's an example of the sort of question that will come up for a whole pile of people. And would be useful to have in a Q&A.
Absolutely.
General stuff for everybody, not just for the people that are in stage 1. Karen.
Yeah, okay. And we did give a sort of list of FAQs without answers, but this is not one of them.
Okay.
Will there, in the second round of evictions, will there be anywhere in the stage 1 for those people to move into?
I don't have a hard answer for that, but what I will do is I'll come back. I think that's part of the staging around the contract award. So I'll have to come back to you on that, Karen. I apologize. I will get that answer for you quickly. I'll get it to Jeff by tomorrow.
Jeff, there's some questions online that quite a bit of a backup. I don't know if
you want Peter, can you?
Them.
Yeah. So are there plans, this relates to the broader redevelopment, are there plans to redevelop parts of Waterloo that don't fall in the estates listed? And are residents in this area eligible for newer homes once they're developed due to being in the suburb but not being in the redeveloped area?
So as in, can they still call for transfers to other areas despite being not in a?
I think, will there be any homes in the new development available?
The gentleman's got his hand up there.
Yeah, sorry, that question was for me. That kind of relates to the parts of Waterloo, you know, your properties on Pitt Street, on Elizabeth Street that fall within the suburb and that might also be of a similar age and potentially of a condition that needs to be redeveloped, but obviously they don't fall under this estate planning because that is that extra housing there. Will tenants from these parts be eligible to move into these new homes because there's this understanding that their properties aren't being redeveloped, or have they got to just go through the transfer process as per usual?
Yeah, I would suggest, Dom, is it? Sorry, mate. I would suggest that they would be putting in transfers and then, you know, it would be on a needs-based, I would say, you know, basis in terms of that move itself.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, fair. All right.
Can I just qualify that for a second? With the way that transfers work is that this is where the tenant has applied. You can apply and you can select like a suburb or an area. But as far as we've been able to see anyway, a tenant can't say, I want to move into this property and be transferred. So I just wanted to like make that clear that under the policy, that's going to be difficult. I think with
The needs, but yeah.
it'll be done based on needs, even if the property that a tenant has seen says, oh, it would meet my
In theory, it was
needs.
possible on swaps.
Correct. And under those mutual exchanges and that kind of thing. Yeah.
And in the same vein, is the plan for tenants relocated in stage 2 to move into the stage 1?
I think that's similar to Karen, and I think it does come down to the staging and the timing of completions. So I couldn't sit here and make a commitment to that. No.
Yeah, and then just to rehash this one, I think is that what's the breakdown of social affordable market housing for stage 1?
For stage 1, it's we've got an estate which is 50-50, but it says stage 1. Carrie, have we got hard numbers on stage 1? Yeah.
And then the question related to the Metro Quarter. So when will the 70 odd units there be ready to occupy? And the following is, where does Homes New South Wales expect to find the remaining required homes for the first stage of relocations?
Look, they'll be based on a lot of that relocation officer process, because there are a number who have already identified they want to move out of the area. The Metro Quarter has been dedicated 100% to relocations to enable the first stage.
Are there places apart from the Waterloo station? Because that's got 70 places, 20 of which are bed cities. 26 of which are bed cities. Not everyone's going to want to downsize from 2 bedrooms to bed sit. I think downsizing isn't the department's strategy. And so are there places apart from that 70 places? So presuming of the 150 people, say half want to stay, half want to go, have you got room for the whole half if they can't all cram into the metro?
So there is another development that is part of the that we're working with the consortium. So another set of brand new apartments that will also be available. But yes, again, we won't start the development until everyone's in a home and relocated out.
So we talking Redfern there or something else?
Where's the City West? Baronia, Baronia apartment.
Where is that?
No, Baronia apartments. Where are they? Yeah, the Baronia apartments. Yeah.
Where are
Carrie, do we know the exact location? It's just not far. Yeah, Zetland. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'll provide that information to Jeff after.
I would say fine, 6 months. But I'm like, do I have to be out in 6 months, or is there another year to go? Because so getting mixed messages about how long keep on going for. I've already had my interview with my relocations officer. You do have to fill out the medical form. And if she offers me something, do I have to take that as my first offer? Because, I'm of 2 minds now. I thought I'd be out 6 months. In that case, I might take the first offer. However, if it can keep on for longer, which people seem to be saying, would I better sit back and just wait?
I think I can answer that for you.
Say,
so in terms of the 6 months, my understanding is that you won't be able to be moved until for at least 6 months. Okay, so you can't be, there's no guarantee it will be 6 months. It might be longer, but at least not for 6 months unless you choose to go earlier. With regards to the offers, you'll get and this is standard for transfers and relocations, tenants get 2 reasonable offers of transfer or to be moved for the relocation. So essentially what that means is it's not that if you don't accept the first one, you won't necessarily get a better or a different property at the second one. But if you sort of reject one that is that doesn't meet the needs that you've identified, then you should definitely get, say no to that one if it does not meet your needs. If it does meet your needs though, and you say no to it just because you don't want to move in there or whatever, the risk that you run is that you don't get as good an offer for the second place and potentially
I understand because the criteria is there. Surely the second
Yeah.
Same as the first one. You know.
Well, I guess, yeah. Correct. And so this is why having having the independent tenant advocate on board with my service, that's something that we can help you with, because we can look at, okay, well, these are the needs that you said that you had in the relocation interview, and make sure that they are accurate, and then the offer that you're made reflects those. And then it is, of course, up to you whether you accept the first place or not. Under the general transfer process, if a tenant rejects 2 offers, they're actually removed from the transfer list. However, given that I'm not actually sure how this would work, given it's a Homes New South Wales initiated transfer and they need you to leave, I'm sure that there might be a way around that if 2 of the properties were not suitable for you. And there are other processes that can take place, like for example, a notice of intention to terminate your tenancy and that kind of thing to require you to vacate. So it's just something to be aware of.
That's that she's going to initiate this really quick.
Yeah.
And, you know, 2 months I'm moving out.
So
However, there could be another year left.
yeah, I totally. And so you won't be required to move in 2 months unless you choose to, unless you say, okay, no, I want to move now.
She said.
I don't know that you would be given an offer right now if you're not being required to move for 6 months. So
I'll 6 months then I say.
I'm not sure exactly when the offers are going to be made. But Carrie might be better to speak to about that.
Yeah.
But can I just emphasise out of that conversation, what happens in your interview in terms of establishing what your needs are, basically then dictates what happens in terms of the bit of paper that says
Correct.
this covers what your needs are. And then that bit of paper is what your offer is actually judged against.
Yes.
So you've got to be really careful at the beginning of that. That's why it's suggested that you have an independent advocate or you have somebody else in there to make sure that that's covered in that interview. Because if it's not covered in that interview that leads to that, then you're potentially having problems.
That's exactly right. So spread the word. We'd really encourage you to speak to your neighbours and tell them to get in touch with Redfern Legal Centre for some of that advice before the relocation interview, if possible. In your case, sir, if you received the relocation statement, which should be a list of what was reflected in your interview, you can get in touch with us still for some advice on that. And if you're concerned that that doesn't match up with what was said in the interview, well, then we might be able to assist to make sure that that is all corrected moving forward. Yeah.
I'm just going to jump up and say, I'm going to make sure I get myself an independent advocate, because while I'm good at speaking out for myself, when your house is involved, you get emotionally involved, and it's hard to be logical and straightforward when you're emotionally engaged. So I would strongly recommend you get an independent advocate. There's flyers here from the Redfern Legal Centre as other services do. So please do yourself a favour. Don't be there on your own, even if you're good at speaking out for yourself generally.
We might move on. We might move on a little bit. We've covered the relocation side reasonably well. I think there's a lot more to dig into, and as I keep coming back to the Q&A sheet being useful to try and at least deal with some of those sort of higher level concerns, both for people that are moving, but also in particular for those people that are still anxious about what's going to happen because they haven't got to their area yet. But I just want to come back to a couple of things, and one of those, Adam, is around the consortium.
Yep.
So you've said that we're going to have, by the end of March, there'll be some agreement in that. I guess the question is, at what point do we actually see what it is that the consortium has offered? Because we've been through a competitive tender process.
Yep.
We've been told that the tenderers have been asked to tell us how they're going to fund the 50-50, how they're going to fund the affordable housing. So at what point do we find out whether that housing's in perpetuity or for 15 years or whatever, which you've asked the tenderers to do? At what point do we see what they've put up? Because normally what happens in these situations is that the bid, if you like, doesn't directly correspond with what the initial sort of planning controls are. So we don't know at this point what has been offered. So at what point do we actually get some visibility of that? what point do we actually be able to get to talk to the people in the consortium?
Yep.
And then the final part, I guess, of that is what wriggle room, after you're finished negotiating with them, will the consortium have to respond to the community and their concerns once you've actually bedded that contract down?
Yeah, for sure. So firstly, I think what needs to be very clear, I know historically with the state redevelopments, we've very much handed over the keys to a developer and said, this is your project now and do your best. That is not our approach with this. This is a Homes New South Wales project that is being delivered by a consortium partnership. So I'd say that off the top to say that make sure that there will be a consistency in delivery around how we connect with the community. In terms of when they come in, I mean, we'll get this contract finalised and done, but we will introduce them when it's practical to do so. Certainly around confirming the plans, we'll be in a better position to do so. That will be a point, but there's some clear roles and you know, for something like relocations, for instance, the only reason one of these CHPs might become involved directly is if they're the CHP of the place where you know, a tenant is relocating to in that instance. So we got full intent to work with the consortium to make sure that you know, that the community has got a chance to interact and speak with them. I don't have a hard date on that yet, Jeff, but as soon as we do, we'll put it out there.
Yeah, I think I find that pretty woolly.
Well, it's just where it is. Like I can't give you a hard date, Jeff. If
but I guess on one level, everything sort of stays under wraps until you actually a DA is done for the stage 1 DA in 2 years' time, right? That's one way of doing it.
Well, look, I guess that won't be the case. Okay. Yeah,
because I think there is people want to see what it is that's coming out of this, what's been agreed. There's been a whole pile of things we've been told. We can't tell you that now, but we'll be able to tell you once we've sort of finalised things with the developer. And we're getting to that stage where there needs to be a plan for how you're actually going to talk to the community about that and how they talk to the developer. So that I guess is one key area.
Yep.
The other one which we're still outstanding on is, and in particular, our concern is around the human services element of the people in place plan. Where people made submissions last year and then there's been no feedback to the community about whether things have changed or what's happened or where that's up to, let alone how it might integrate with the existing human services plan. So where are we up to on that and when are we going to be able to have more of that conversation?
Yeah, and it's an important one to have. I think a couple of things I want to acknowledge is the feedback that we've got from community is certainly it will be reflected in the people in place plan. I think the other thing that's really important to call out is, you know, we certainly could have done a much better job in integrating the work of the Human Services Action Plan earlier. We're kind of going back and doing that now. So that's a piece of work that we are doing, and most likely, to be fair, we probably would have been back out to community with that people in place plan. But as you know, Jeff, we acknowledge that we need to do a better job of actually pulling those things together. The people in place plan is tied to the development, and we have to have that specifically for Waterloo South. But certainly, you know, my role oversees community development across all of New South Wales. I acknowledge that normally we draw up one of these people in place plans when we're looking to build something. I'm pushing the argument that even if we're not building something, that place and people still exist in the places where we are. And we have to do a much better job of that. There's no reason why a community that maybe hasn't got redevelopment on the cards in the short term doesn't deserve the same kind of plan for people in place as somewhere that does have a redevelopment. But traditionally, government, that's just not how it's been done. So we're working hard around that. But in terms of the whole up, Jeff, it has been because we've acknowledged that we should have done a better job in pulling those two things together. And we're going through the throes of doing that at the moment.
I guess the other thing that's happening at the present moment is that there's been quite substantial changes, machinery of government changes within the housing services side of things. So at the present moment, there's plans for a Sydney district. There is. And we know that sort of staffing in the local office is is low. So
Yep.
a whole pile of things that were happening on the human services stuff have stalled a bit because
Yep.
of the deck chairs being rearranged
Yes.
within government.
For sure.
So you've also got that aspect. And then the final aspect of that is that the homes are taking over the tenant participation side of things.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we'll be rolling out over a little bit. Do you want to talk about those?
Yeah, I can do that. So I can tell you right now that the Sydney district will launch on April 7th. The Sydney district will capture roughly 11,000 properties across the City of Sydney area. That is significantly less than our other districts across the state, but we see the need and the requirement around to do that. What that'll mean is that there'll be around about 250 properties per client service officer. Our current rates are a little bit closer to 400, which is no doubt contributes to, poor customer service outcomes for many of our tenants. So yeah, April 7th, that will launch. We are out in recruitment for that permanently. The permanent Sydney director will not be in place on that day, but that won't stop us moving forward with the changes that we've proposed. So there'll be someone who'll be put into that role for a period of time while we go and finalise recruitment. But April 7 is the date. I think it will result in better outcomes. It's not going to take away that we still have some challenges with churn in our front line, and we're working through that. But I think having 11,000 properties a real focus for the that City of Sydney area, and I think most notably bringing back that client service officer property count from 400 odd to 250 will have a significant impact on the lived experience of tenants in this area. Yep.
I'm a tenant rep for 2 blocks that haven't been designated for immediate relocation, but we've been told, I believe, that we've got 2 years, we've got a 2-year window.
Oh, yeah.
Is that realistic? Because surely it will take you longer, it will take Stockland longer to utilise the properties from which people are being asked to move, to utilise that area to create a high-rise. I don't know how many high-rises.
Yes.
And the other thing that really bothers me at the moment is our 2 blocks. It's bounded by Wellington on the south and Bradman on the north and Cope on the west and George on the east. It's in the repair is immense. Like there are parts of fencing completely missing. Some fencing are completely corroded through. There are great watering holes in where people go into their car park area. The garbage bay areas have huge holes punched into the lattice frameworks. There are rats running from the garbage bay areas. There are mice. And people's places aren't getting repaired. The guy on the ground level where I am, he's waited for as long as he's been there, he's got depression. So, it's not helping him that stuff isn't happening in his field. I'm just wondering whether how's you going to see it worth it to do repairs on these 2 blocks, because it's falling. I'm amazed. I haven't heard, but I'm amazed that if people have broken their legs or their ankles on those potholes yet, because they get there for a terribly long time.
Thanks. This is a concern that's been raised around the place, especially in Waterloo South. Do you want to respond?
I'll say what from our perspective, absolutely they should be doing the repairs, even if your properties have been, for future relocation, like 2 years down the track, even if you're not moving for 6 months and there's significant repair issues in the property, it does not mean that repairs should not be carried out. I really encourage, we hear about so many repair issues in public housing across our entire catchment area, but Waterloo and the surrounding suburbs are some of the worst in terms of the reports that we get. And so just if you want some advice and someone to, I guess, assist you, if we're able to encourage you and any of your neighbours to get in touch with us and get some advice, because in short, just because it's meant for relocation doesn't mean that if there's a repair and maintenance issue that it shouldn't be carried out. Yeah.
Is it? Sorry. Sorry, go on.
You actually make a good point. This is the end, yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, sorry, before you go.
Yeah.
Is it realistic also in view of the fact that there's a staff shortage with homes? How is that staff shortage within the LAHC area or the new?
Oh, you're talking about housing services or housing, like the maintenance area? Oh, okay, yeah. Look, there's no doubt we do have turnover. It's something that we're addressing across the business in our front line, not just here, but across the state, to be fair. Like in terms of the specific repairs you're speaking to.
I'm running our entire streets, you know.
Again, I wouldn't be in a position to give you a specific time frame, but I'm happy to take literally write these things down, send an email to the head of our portfolio maintenance area and follow it up for you. We've got no problem doing that.
Quick question.
Yeah, I was like, you made a good point about like maintenance, like again, like the really, really first time I had a bad experience with maintenance in my place was when my bathroom had got flooded and my bedroom got flooded. When my bedroom got flooded, it took two of my closest organizations to help me out because my bedroom was not accessible to sleep.
Yeah.
And the organization had a timeline, the reason for the like discussions. 1 minute I got told from Homes that since I wasn't sleeping in my one bedroom because it was not livable to sleep in, that they gave me two options, which was free rent of paying one bedroom, or basically it was just pay a different or whatever I owed for that rent. So I've got the timeline and I've got pictures of what the damage was.
So I think that's for me to give, I guess, information specific to your situation would be advice, which I can't do in this forum. But what I would say is that in those situations, there is absolutely advice to be given. So again, get some legal advice because there are options for you, like potentially rent reductions and that kind of thing. And just on the point you touched on about, it took you some of your agencies to assist you. Just as another comment I want to make is that it's been our experience that tenants come to us and they say, we've been reporting this for like 10 years, or a really significant amount of time and have gotten nowhere with the maintenance. And it's not until our service gets involved or another support service is able to get involved and do some advocacy that in many cases, all of a sudden, there's some action that is taken. And that's not good enough because it shouldn't require involvement from services for everyone to get repairs done at their homes. And Homes or New South Wales Land and Housing Corporation have an obligation to maintain the properties where tenants have reported them. So look, I totally understand your frustrations and we hear it from tenants every day. I just encourage you, if you have those issues again, try and get some advice as soon as possible after reporting the issue to housing so that we can help you with
because
those.
When the organisation got together and done it, I had a special guest coming from Land and Housing itself. They came and looked at the property and they go, yeah, you can't live in this bedroom. So you've got a couple of stuff. Sure.
I believe the time is 7:30 finished.
Yes,
Can you summarize a little bit because I can.
It's all been recorded, so
it's been recorded. So yes, I can give you a summary at the end.
Yes.
You've got a bit of an idea.
Just a reminder as well, Redfern Legal Centre every Tuesday. We're just on Coke Street at the end, 222. They're there from 11 till 2 o'clock. And can provide the same type of advice and engage with you one-on-one. And you're welcome there with the one lead, so it's a really relaxed space and just a short walk away.
Yes. All right, now I just want to close by just sort of telling you that the next REDWatch meeting has actually come forward a week, and it will be on the 27th of March, and it will be about the new proposal for above the Waterloo Metro. So a couple of things to mention here. One of those is that those people that are going into the Waterloo Metro will be going into what will be a building site for the next probably 12 months or so, because that development has been delayed. And it will be an interesting sort of look at how, because a whole pile of people, as the site gets redeveloped, are going to be in the same sort of situation. They're going to be next to redevelopment sites. But what's happened in terms of the proposal from the developers on that side is that they want to put a fourth tower up, which will overshadow what was going to be the new park, and increase the shadowing on that. So we've asked the people from Mirvac, John Holland, to come to the next REDWatch meeting and explain their proposal and what they want to do, so that people can hear from them. But it's going to be brought forward because they're not available for us in April. So we're going to be doing that on the 27th of March.
Is the developers or Stockland?
So that's not Stocklands. That's done by John Holland and Mirvac, who are the developers on that site. Stocklands we hope to talk to in the not too distant future. I want to close by thanking Adam for coming along. I know it's not easy for people from within Homes to come along and get bombarded with questions. But I also want to thank very much the support services that have come along, because I think it's useful to have not only Homes there, but people who are actually dealing with having to deal with tenants and the issues that throws up. I think it's a useful context for people, and hopefully it's been useful in terms of unpacking some of the issues around relocations and giving you a picture of where things are up to more broadly with Homes New South Wales and Waterloo. So thanks very much for the evening, and have a good night.